Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome back to a Requiem in London. In today's scene, Mr. Goodman has sent a message to Mr. Hartwell about meeting up at a location to discuss possible trade and just general upkeep of his work with the Ordo over these past few weeks. Mm. He's been told that he'd like him to meet at his particular laboratory outside. I'm assuming is it the Invictus is north, I believe, right? They control more of the northern area.
Yeah, I'm actually Bishop knows exactly where it is. It is in a nebulous place in the Invictus held parts of the city. It was a warehouse at one point. I'm led to understand.
Yeah. And once it's been confirmed that the territory is safe for Ordo to walk through, he's willing to meet him there. And as Goodman begins gathering his supplies to meet Hartwell, yeah, maybe he gets a message from Mr. Irons talking about what he's doing, and he figures out that might be a good idea just to be a tag along. But
Okay. Yes. What is actually very likely to have happened is that probably after he got the message from Hartwell, he got an SMS from Marcus saying, "Against all odds, I'm still amongst the unliving." Well, okay, maybe not unliving. Actually, he'll just write, "Against all odds, I am amongst the living. What you up to?"
Goodman would just say that he's about to meet Hartwell. It's a general upkeep and possible trade. So,
Mind if I tag along? Question mark.
It's nothing too private, so he has nothing against it. Well, he will make sure to send Hartwell ahead of time so he doesn't get, let's just say, discouraged about your presence.
Yeah. So that gets done. Marcus probably first meets up with Goodman before the two move towards the place. Hartwell suggested.
And about, I'd say, probably, just an hour or so, Goodman and Irons arrive at the location. They Goodman makes sure to move around because he's not sure what kind of defenses are around this place, in a very benign fashion and very obvious. So whatever guards or defenses that notice him will hopefully not try to kill him at first sight.
A man dressed in a very sanitary white coat will probably come down out of the building. He will nod politely before he'll say, "Mr. Goodman and Mr. Irons, pleasure, sir. Would you please step inside?"
Of course.
And Goodman nods as he arrives in the building. Oh, he's been in this place once. If it's the same place I remember.
It is a different place.
Different place. Okay.
Different place. You will notice Hartwell has set up the building. Excuse me 1 second. There's a large series of very complicated glyphs on the floor in series and concentric spirals that have been etched into the ground. This place has a very much the smell of very kind of sanitized, very sanitized medicinal kind of vibe, if you get me. Mm-hmm. There's definitely the smell of a lot of kindred vitae here, a lot of different kindred vitae. As a matter of fact, as Hartwell steps out of a room and closes it behind him, you will see a staked, torpid figure laying on a slab. "Ah, gentlemen, a pleasure. Welcome to my humble place of work."
Goodman, though, trying to look polite, kind of, no. You can also tell he's forcing himself to, I'm not necessarily force himself, he is choosing not to breathe and goes, You might want to work on the smell here. You never know who might have a sensitive nose walking by.
Quite so, quite so. Oh, please, my office is just this way, gentlemen. We'll be more comfortable in there, I think.
So, do you right?
You will notice quite immediately, actually, and this would be of interest to both of you. Well, more so for Goodman than it would be for Irons, I suppose. This place has real state-of-the-art medical technology. Like, as you would probably expect to find in a very high-end hospital.
Yeah, Goodman will definitely have a curious look on his face. And won't even distract himself at one of the machines and goes, "How'd you get these?"
My paymasters were quite generous.
It's not just simply the money you need permits for this kind of stuff.
Well, when one works for the Invictus, they tend to be quite able to get you what you require.
He raises an eyebrow to that.
Raises an eyebrow as well. You know, with a "what are you on about, man" look.
He will walk into his office. He will gesture for you both to sit down, and he'll say, "Do you have some comment you'd wish to make, Mr. Irons?"
For the lack of a better phrasing, I've been knocked out for a few nights. What have I missed?
Quite a lot, I'm afraid. Well, he delicately folds his hands across his desk. He kind of pens his fingers together, and he says, "Do you mind if I smoke, gentlemen? An odd habit I picked up in life."
If you don't mind that I light one up, sure thing.
By all means.
Produces a packet of Lucky Strikes, knocks out a cigarette, puts it in the corner of his mouth, just out of habit offers it to the other two.
Hartwell, for his part, removes his own cigarette. He will wave down a Lucky Strike. But you guess his cigarettes they look to be, they're not hand rolled, but they look to be very kind of thick, maybe Eastern European. But he places it in his mouth and he lights it with an electric lighter before he'll say, "Very well. Information. I'm afraid that it is not good news. The infestation of the owls in the city is more severe than myself or my sire thought. We encountered dozens of the creatures occupying many revenant bodies in the sewers underneath Kingston on Thames.
Okay. Please continue.
No.
The Carthian movement has been irreparably infiltrated. The former leader of the Carthian movement, one Grayman, is responsible for summoning the Strix to this city."
And that Goodman kind of looks intently on. Like, I've got information about this Grayman. I heard about the Strix infecting the revenants under the city, but to him summon them specifically, I haven't heard till now.
We encountered a revenant or a former revenant girl. He'll describe your child, Americus.
Actually, fun fact is, as he says, we came across, was it Holly by any chance?
I didn't get a name.
He describes her.
Quite so.
That's my child. And yes, I happen to know that came across Alley Cat swung by last night and was hoping to inform me about that.
I see.
And she's not a revenant, she's a Ventru.
As you say. We encountered the child before we penetrated too deeply into the sewers. I was the only one who could see down there, and the Strix manifested darkness, but then again, darkness holds no great mystery for me. Grayman has become irreparably tainted. He has infiltrated the Carthian movement, root and stem.
I'm
Might
afraid.
explain their ferocity in these past months.
Yes. As it stands, even the Invictus are being put on the back foot. We have not yet lost this war by any means, but we are definitely, well, on the back foot.
Which is strange. Charlie brought up that the Invictus were infected as well. Few of the hounds, if I'm no, the Archons, yes, few of the Archons she assumed might be possessed as well.
Yes, Constantine destroyed them. The infection in the Invictus has not run very deep due to precautions that were taken by our dear and illustrious sheriff.
I see. Which I guess that brings us further concerns. What about the Ordo and the Circle? And the Lankea to be for sure. If we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this thoroughly.
The Kogile is currently under investigation by 2 Twilight judges for her links to the murders of several members of our own organization illegally, in order to protect the fact that she has more than likely been deeply altered by the Strix and their ideologies.
This is just a piss then. This is
She intended to have me killed rather than have me expose her, because I caught her quite literally red-handed in the execution of a Nosferatu, a member of our organization whom she killed with her own fangs in his haven. I still carry the proof of that.
So that explains why he went missing.
Quite so.
That was going to be my particular task for Miss Festal. But she said it was already taken care of. That explains that.
I have no doubt they'll wish to lobby some kind of cover-up, but as I said, 2 Twilight judges are currently investigating her for the possibilities, and she did attempt to have me murdered. Were it not for the intervention of one of these 2 Twilight judges, a Nosferatu of some great age and experience, I would now be dead.
Well, I'm glad that you're still doing well then, obviously.
He shrugs. As it stands, this city requires unity. The Carthians need to be destroyed, dealt with, burned out. The corruption needs to be purged.
It's that bad. Genocide is not a small word to say.
Let me put it like this, Mr. Goodman. I have walked these nights for almost 80 years. I am young by some, old by others. I have never seen this many of them this coordinated and acting of a single common accord. I don't know exactly what they are working towards. I don't know exactly why they are here. There is information I possess. He kind of taps the side of his head, but it is jumbled. I am currently trying to sift through it for useful pieces of information. But, needless to say, I encountered more than a dozen Strix in a dozen revenant bodies in those sewers, and there are many more besides. The Carthians have been interweaving with them for months. The corruption spreads incredibly deep. But that is not the only issue the Carthian movement currently face.
Do explain, because if you're not, I assume we all know of Alley Cat, and she's been a very active member, on top of Miss Brothers.
Yeah, a friend of mine. Although, this is an interesting situation.
Are either of you aware of a venture of incredible age by the name of Valerius?
Am I aware of him? Yes. Yes, his command of a room washes over me every time like a tsunami. Yes, I am aware of him.
Goodman nods.
Fascinating. Well, are you aware that his childer is the current speaker for the Carthian movement, one Master Stanhope, or Stanshope?
I thought he was replaced by another woman.
No, she is their war leader, Verve. He still maintains his position as speaker, and their nominal head.
They do it a bit like the Native Americans. They have a chief for peace and a chief for war.
Quite so. However, Mr. Stanforth, rather, not Stanhope. Mr. Stanforth is the childer of Valerius, and it would seem as though Master Valerius has been moving the pieces all over the city. He has been puppet mastering everything from behind the shadows to allow his childer, in the form of Valerius's brood, Stanforth, to ascend the throne. This whole war was a concoction of this one elder's mad desire.
To rule London, I assume.
He does not wish to rule London directly. He wishes to see his blood on the throne. However, he has done this before.
To be the power behind the throne.
Why be the face when you can be the hands? I get it. But what does it have to do with the Strix as well? Unless that's just a
I believe the
coincidence.
Strix are monopoly. I do not believe that Valerius, whom mine own sire speaks so highly of, has anything directly to do per se with the Strix. However, I believe the Strix are currently monopolizing on his schemes. They breed in chaos. They sow dissent where there is unity. They would treat this situation as though it were a smorgasbord for crows.
So then, I
Yeah.
guess my question is this: do we inform Valerius about the situation for him to do something about it? If he's been
I'm led to
controlling,
understand.
Goodman continues, like, if he's been controlling this whole entire situation for decades, I would think he'd be aware of the Strix, let's just say, poaching on his machinations.
I am led to understand that he is very well aware of the Strix's presence within this city.
Then why does he seem to do nothing about it?
Aloofness.
I believe he does not necessarily care about the day we call today, or the thoughts and feelings of the individual. He thinks in decades and centuries, not in tomorrows.
He's an ancient Ventrue. He's a lion. In his mind, he doesn't concern himself with the opinions of the sheep.
No, the thing is, if the sheep are all gone, lion starves.
However, I am led to understand that Valerius himself is soon to enter torpor.
He's been for a very long time.
He clings on with his fingertips. But I will
So-
not, and I will say this again, and in all good company, I will not allow this man to walk through an ocean of blood in order to seat his bastard kin upon some kind of throne. That is my clan's by right.
Well, good luck.
Goodman, unfortunately, kind of does a shrug, though. He tries to have sincere empathy to the situation. Instability is only good if it's properly maintained and monitored. What's happening right now does not feed the Ordo's interests. Thus, I'm in the opinion to more or less obviously involve itself, because a city cannot be researched or properly experimented with if there's no city.
I believe that the Invictus need to retake power in this city. The current prince has always proven to be a very generous patron. He gestures around his own office
But
to our needs.
that
He
may
has
be
proven
true,
himself.
but
And so,
that may be true, but public opinion about him is very low.
in a manner of speaking, there is certain information about the prince that I possess that I am unfortunately unable to share that may change your perspective somewhat if you were to come to know it in the nights to come.
All I know, he hasn't been making friends with me directly, nor do I feel like he's been making the Ordo in a better position.
As I said, underneath the prince, we enjoyed a great deal of patronage and protection. There's a reason why we have sided with them in this conflict.
Well, as far as some of the mysteries say, they weren't aware of their particular little vitae experimentation.
Hmm.
I've recently come to be the potential protege of an individual who I believe that both of you would hold in great esteem in the form of the wolf. Fascinating man. But I believe individuals like him have a vision for this city, and it is one that I personally feel should be brought about.
Julian looks over to Marcus to kind of see how he responds to this.
Hmm. I haven't really told you fellows yet why I'm not still torpid in some morgue or being interrogated by the Lancare Sanctum.
When I try to retrieve your body, you're already gone.
For what it's worth, I appreciate the effort. Yes. Yeah. It was expediently taken away by our fellow Order Dracul member who actually owns that place, and I had the singular pleasure of meeting my sire. Not quite the man I remembered him to be.
Whom is your sire?
Well, a name he didn't quite want to give, but I've got a strong feeling it's actually not Sir Alsop. That's probably just one of his several covers. But yes, he took the Berserker formula and he refined it.
So this was a previous scale experimentation then.
Yes, and it seems he was successful in refining it. I haven't gone berserk on anyone yet.
Indeed, the wolf did postulate as to exactly how it was you were able to maintain your sanity for as long as you have. I was only able to stipulate vague possibilities as opposed to an actual answer.
Yeah. He sees that there is a rot in the Order Dracul as well, and he wishes it removed. That's why I'm here in the first place. That is my purpose. To fight those wee umbral beasties.
So your sire literally made you the tail he's chasing.
Mm. Well, I did also ask him what I had to gain and to lose if I did or didn't cooperate. He'd reclaim my vitae if I don't. But he'd also see that his Chalder would stand in good stead and a solid base. Heck, I might even be able to get some tutelage out of him. I mean, he can still go eat a bag of dicks for what he did to me, but at the very least I can understand the rationale behind it. And he'll wish to speak with some of the mysteries, actually, some, to be more precise, with somebody who is my boss, for the lack of a better word. So I'll be seeing that he gets his talk. and that those elements who have been working against the Order of Call's interest are accounted for properly.
As I said, there are currently 2 Twilight judges in the domain who are investigating a third. The simple
Good.
fact of the matter is that the Ordo stands on the edge of a knife.
And I would rather see our covenant flourish than go down like Troy.
Yes. This is, as I said, the Carthians will not be kind to us if the Carthians ascend to the princedom. All of this muttering about what we did in the Shard has polluted them. As I said, all we did was advance our understanding and our knowledge. We merely walked upon the building blocks that we were given. But the Invictus will be good patrons. This is why I voice and advocate our support to them. As it stands, I have already begun this relationship by providing them with what they've required. He reaches into his desk and he brings out a very kind of stylized, one of those old-timey metal and glass needles?
Yes.
And he places it down on the table in front of you guys.
Julian, though, even from this day, he kind of sniffs at it. Want me to roll, or can you describe maybe what he smells?
Oh, there's Vitae in it.
Okay. Yeah. And he goes, "Who was it from?"
Mine. But due to the alchemical properties and nature, it severs the connection to me. However, if you could inject a mortal with this, for the next entire evening he will be able to control the flow, ebb, current, and blaze of fire with his mind.
It's a dangerous tool to have.
It's an even more dangerous tool to wield.
Due to my mastery of my specific mystery, they would be able to wield it as comparably as I can. I'm also able to distill other supernatural practices into the form of such inoculations. This is just the one I happen to have on hand.
What happens if a kindred were to inject himself with that?
It simply would not take effect. They may get a point. They may get a supply of Vitae from it.
I know we have scales to make super soldiers out of mortals, but to bestow them with even a fraction of a coil, that's going to put a lot of strain on their body.
Yes, this is why the super soul. Oh, Dr. Goodman, you are a fellow connoisseur. You might find this interesting. He takes a dossier from inside his desk and he slides it across the table to Julian.
Marcus pockets the old-timey injection needle and stuff.
Well, you can have it if you want. That's fine. He doesn't care.
What if a kindred already possesses the base ability to do what you described, but hasn't got full mastery yet?
I have no idea. I haven't tried it.
Shall we give it a try?
We would need a bishop.
He gives what I can only describe as a wolfish grin.
But Julian, I guess, what he hands you is really so. There is your main coil is the coil of the worm, right?
Yeah.
But you also do research in terms of you were a medical doctor, weren't you?
Yes.
Or something to do. Yeah. Basically, as you read through Alexander's, it's a weird mixture of surgery and sorcery that you're reading through at the moment. Like very kind of much, it blurs the lines between both. Are you familiar with the scale for the coil of Zenitra that's located in the lore of the Covenants? I believe it is. 1 second, I'll find its actual name.
No, I am not. I mainly went through obviously the core book and the Ordo book.
I'll find it for you then, because I'll read it out verbatim, because that's just so much easier for me. Or the Covenants 2E. Order to Cool. Appendix. Order to Cool. Rights and Sorceries. Coil of Zenitra. Yeah, here it is. It is called Uno Momento. Yeah, por favor. It's called Grafting on Holy Flesh. The dragon must spend a point of vitae in order to fuse the body part with his own form. As long as the dragon keeps the body part animated as part of his body, he gains access to the body. Basically, it lets you surgically remove a body part from a kindred and graft it to your own body. And as long as it's grafted there, you can use any supernatural power that is tied to it. Like, for example, if I was to rip out Marcus's eye and pop it into my socket, I could use Marcus's Dominate. Essentially, it's notes on that, but whereas this version of it is spending both vitae and willpower point per its normal cost. If the victim survives the surgery, he loses access to the ability so long as the body part remains detached. So similarly loses the ability to regenerate that body part. The body part has a health level equal to its size, separate from the vampire's. If it loses all its health levels, it becomes worthless to the vampire. He may use this to affix body parts to other kindred or ghoul. He essentially has that. But what he did is he made a level 5 version of it, which this is level 4, that essentially lets somebody regrow the body part he surgically amputates and use the power, even though he's amputated it. So essentially, he takes it, rips it off, cobbles it onto somebody else. You wake up, regrow the thing that he's torn off, and essentially both of you can access the power. So that is
like nods as he goes through the folder and reads through this and says, "You've been very busy, Mr. Hartwell."
They don't pay us to be idle.
No, they don't. And he closes it and says, "It is a useful technique. I am not going to lie about that. But obviously, we already get enough looks as it is. But if the other covenants would know about this, they would be, as usual, apprehensive."
My dear Master Goodman, the other covenants are going to learn soon enough, because the first of my creations will be arriving on the battlefield shortly.
Call them at least by their name.
I beg your pardon?
They are not it. They are people. Marcus has got an angry expression on his face. Not quite frenzy yet, but definitely pissed off at that formulation.
You quite misunderstand me, Mr. Irons. These were volunteers. I have not done this to anyone without their permission. The parts I have taken are from, well, less scrupulous kindred from the Carthian movement primarily, but they have been used to enhance members of other covenants who are loyal to the prince's cause.
Okay. Just careful when you're flippant about people with a similar condition than I have.
I have merely taken from our enemies to strengthen our allies.
Okay. All right. I can live with that.
From your notes, Hartwell, how long are these party parts supposed to last? It says, going from your notes, it doesn't seem like these body parts will rot in the subject's body.
Correct. They will stay as long as they are, well, undamaged.
Which is another question. Are they disturbed by any types of acts of violence, or do they have to be targeted?
They have to be targeted.
And the psychological effects on the subject?
The subject, aka the amputee, has yet to be, or the amputees have yet to be awakened from torpor for anything long enough than their basic ability to heal the wounds and damage. As for the individuals who had the grafts done, they did so with their full prior knowledge.
No, what I mean is
All right.
the body doesn't reject it. There doesn't seem to be any type of adverse side effects. That's what I'm more surprised about.
We are undead, Mr. Goodman. Our bodies no longer care for such simple things as blood types and organ rejection. This is, as I say, a mixture of sorcery and science. It is neither fully one nor fully the other.
That is true, but commonly, at least through my study of the scale, there's always some type of catch. No scale has been perfected where there is no type of side effect.
The side effect is I have to rip it off somebody else's body.
Well, let me put this in example.
Mm.
And I forgot the particular name, but he'll describe it. There's a scale that allows us to remove blood bonds, but on a particular human or a ghoul, you're nearly drowning them, while a kindred can, since we do not have to breathe, can relatively go unscathed.
Mm.
So outside of, at best,
Scuba gear? Maybe that would help? That they can breathe under the blood?
they has to go through their body upside down.
Ugh,
Yes,
that's,
as a matter of fact,
that's
I
gonna
would be
be a
more.
pain.
I would more than likely recommend artificially inflating their lungs by some kind of tracheotomy, but that's just me.
Thank you for the information. That might prove useful to me in the future.
Doesn't change the fact on a mortal that particular ritual is. If it was known, used in the public knowledge, would be nigh torturous against typical conventions of warfare and medical research. But we do what we have to do to get things done.
At the end of the day, the Invictus and the Ordo are in this conflict together, though the Circle of the Crone will, I am led to understand, be joining us in the next few nights.
Maybe Miss Alleycat should be joining the Circle of the Crone then, after what transpired.
My sire, Master Constantine, is even now speaking to his elders because, as it stands, or rather his equals, because as it stands, well, the Strix have become such a problem in the Carthian movement that, well, it will more than likely sway the circle.
Out of curiosity, those Invictus who were killed, were they the ones distributing Violet
Hackett,
and meddling?
I believe is his name.
Yes.
He shrugs. In theory, Violet was a very simple drug. Unfortunately, since it has been brought off the market, it has made feeding more difficult in a time when feeding should not have been made more difficult. But then again, the Carthians had to swing blindly at things that they barely understood.
Well,
I suppose that's their way.
I don't mean to be a stick in the mud, but I will still take obviously, your words into proper counsel. But until I get official move from Ordo um,
Higher ups.
higher ups, I can't make any direct moves. So if you need my assistance, obviously I can write that off as a favor or just simply assisting another member.
I have a piece of information for you, Mr. Goodman, that is of importance and is of value. Though I don't want anything in exchange for it, I just wouldn't want to see you, an individual whom has, well, proven his mettle by, well, your continued existence being put to final death because of a, well, misunderstanding. Nikolai, I'm led to understand that he is a coterie mate of both of you.
Not exactly, but we are close.
Not a coterie mate, yet he resides in the same worm's nest as I do.
Mm-hmm. You are aware that he is working for the interests of Valerius against the better nature of the Ordo Dracul.
Marcus's eyes expand a little bit.
There is a look of conflict on Goodman's face. How sure are you about this?
Yes,
positive.
how
Quite positive.
Any proof? Because right now this is anecdotal.
Hmm. He taps his eye and he says, "It's all about seeing things in a certain way."
well, not all of us have auspex, so if you could elaborate a little bit, that would be rather welcome.
Currently, Master Nikolai is planning an assault upon a weapons cache or weapons depot. Do either of you have any knowledge as to this?
Nope, this is news to me, although, wow, a weapons
He spoke about
depot.
it. He spoke about it, Mr. Goodman, when I held that little miniature symposium with the Carthians.
Goodman nods, though. His motions seem reluctant.
Are you aware of your chosen destination?
I'm aware that I was willing to help him out. He's a been a useful and a pleasant ally, and I knew it was some type of PNC that the prince might have probably owns. And at the time don't much care for the prince, so I was more than willing to do it.
Yes. He's doing that on behalf of Valerius.
Hmm. Now, whether he agreed freely or he was brainwashed into it is hard to say, but it is a possibility that he was forcibly made compliant.
Indeed, he may not be in control of his own actions.
But the point of the matter is, Mr. Goodman, if you were found to be involved in this, considering the slippery slope I believe the prince already views you as being upon, the Ordo would be forced to have you executed. And as I said, you seem like a very amenable chap to me.
Julian, like in the picture, his arms are kind of crossed,
Mhm.
and you could tell, like with one of his arms, it's flexing almost like he's having like some type of seizure or cramp. Like there's definitely some type of like internal conflict in him right now, and he is doing his best to control his breath and just kind of think.
I've made the prince aware of the fact that someone is going to destroy his weapons depot. I have not made him aware of who is going to do it, because I did not wish to endanger a fellow member of our organization. I will hope that you gentlemen are sufficient in talking him out of it, or making it so he is incapable of doing so, because the last thing we want at this point is a disruption between ourselves and the Invictus. Once again, they've proven to be our allies, and I would hate for that milk to sour.
Hmm.
And you are sure, not just simply that Nikolai may or may not be attacking this particular cache with or without my help, but the Prince and the Invictus are not just manipulating the situation to keep us on their side, or at least at best, how we have proof of a receipt for the Ordo and the Invictus to make sure that we keep helping them.
The Ordo have, as I said, benefited greatly from the Invictus's princedom. They are one of the main reasons that they have. Well, we are the smallest covenant, I believe, gentlemen. Possibly the Circle of the Crone may have equal numbers, but it's hard to tell. However, our enemies have much greater amounts of kindred and resources that they could bring to bear against us if we do not side with one, either the Carthians, whom would see us damned for what some of us may have done in the Shard, that prison that they tell boogeyman's tales about, or the Invictus, who have been our friends, our patrons. Well, we would be crushed. It is a simple matter of the economics of war. As for your friend Nikolai, he stood before a great throne swathed all in black, with a giant figure whom sat upon it. Now, let's put it like this. There are two individuals in the city who that could represent. The Prince, or Valerius. When I spoke to the Prince on this matter, he was, I feel, legitimately surprised. Not only that, but the cult of Valerius has been moving in very interesting and odd ways of late. But unless you knew where to look, you'd never see it. If you ever hear about an organization called the Order of the Golden Eagle, run away.
Golden Eagle.
Yes.
Like the Roman one?
Well, where do you think Valerius traces his lineage to? Also, Valerius himself is a Roman or is a Latigic word.
It was hard to say. There were some elements of his clothing that reminded me of a Romano Brit, but then again, hard to say how much was Celtic and how much was Latin. But yes, it figures. I mean, I might be barking up the wrong tree, but have any of you two ever been to the Roman baths in Hackney?
That's one of the places he just took over.
Well, looks as if I just lost a favorite swimming spot. However, there is something very strange that happens every time I'm there. It's not as if I feel more aggressive or my beast seems to be that much more aggressive, but it and my senses, at least the last two times I were there, always felt sharpened after a short while. Although with that information you give me, I shall not visit it anytime soon. Who knows? Maybe I'm falsely associating things. Causation doesn't have to always... doesn't matter. But good to know. Good to know. Thank you. Any old venture is a kindred to be wary about, but a kindred that old, a venture that old, yeah. Rather not get into his sights.
I'm curious if he's old as he is, how he's been surviving this long.
I've been thinking about that as well. There are certain powers of the blood, certain coils, that do enable individuals to stave off torpor, but he casually shrugs.
Eating?
Beg your pardon?
Like, that is true, but how is he eating? At the age he's at, he has to feed off the kindred.
That's not terrifically hard if you consider the fact that it would be perfectly possible for him to have an entire ready-made herd, practically, of kindred to satiate his needs.
There's discomfort on Goodman's face, thinking about him manipulating a herd of kindred to feed off of.
But yes, the only options I can think of are either blood sorcery, which has its limits, or some kind of coil, and in that case I have no idea how he would have learned one.
Who knows? Maybe he's old enough that he was around when he saw the origin of what became the coil.
Yes, our order was
Ooh.
not the first necessarily to practice them, we merely refined them to an art.
That is true.
Quite
but
true.
even then, historically, the Ordo isn't as old as we come off as. But with the coils, as far as my history is correct, it's a combination of Lankea and Chrome sorcery with, well, something else. But I
The
still
will, the eye, the breath of the dragon, all that good metaphorical bullshit.
indeed. So, if he is messing around with the coil that was, let's just say, a prototype of what we use now, I'm surprised it's been working for him this well.
Who's to say? When it comes to true ancients like that, it's very difficult to judge what powers they have. However, frankly, I will not, cannot, and shall not allow him to spill this much blood, treat this city as a chessboard to install his ilk and his kin upon the throne.
I'll just say this, and that is being a very, very junior representative of my clan. You're gonna have your work cut out if his behavior is even anything close to that I've seen of older members of my clan. You won't go quietly, and you won't go easily. It is in our nature to want to control.
Well, if he's going to go into torpor anyway, so it'll be
Which would explain why he wants his child in power seated so that he can rest whatever eons he needs to, knowing that one of his bloodline is watching over him.
Mind you, the Venture are also known to not suffer failures. I believe that if Stanforth falls from grace, if he loses his movement, if he is cast out, bloodied, beaten, and torn,
I wouldn't
I do
be
not think
surprised if Valerius would exsanguinate him himself.
the Carthians must be informed as to the true nature of their benevolent ruler. I believe Verve at that point would kill him himself, would kill him herself.
She is a guillotiner, wouldn't surprise me.
Yes. Though I have managed to... I have managed to garner from the prince a rather substantial boon. Any Carthian who lays down their weapons and surrenders will not be killed. They will be allowed to surrender.
Yes. Why can't things just be simple? But of course, where to be the challenge and simplicity?
If the world were simple, men like I wouldn't have to have plied my trade.
I'm just not in the mood to keep killing people that don't necessarily need to die.
Same here. But sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes it's either them or you. It doesn't make me proud, but I will fight to survive. I've got people who depend on me. I've got people I'm taking care of, for the lack of a better word. It's giving me a reason to exist.
Much the same. I have burdens that I need to shoulder, and those whom I need to protect, and so it is, here I sit. And if I have to bloody my hands to do so, then so be it.
Yeah.
We, after all, exist to spit in the face of God.
It's this whole thing that in my career, which, naive as it is, just keep it simple. Small resistances now and again, display of force in moments of rebellion, and just decades and decades upon research. Wasn't expecting to be in more of a, let's just say, a gray war.
Mm. You'll laugh. I was mildly hoping that with my changed state I might be able to have eked out, so to speak, my little plot, just taking care of my business, maybe enjoying a few decades of undead retirement and see how things go, but nah, I guess die by the sword. Exist by the sword? Damn. These sayings just don't really work with our condition that well. But yes, I guess at the end of the day, it is very simple. I've the faction I've sworn loyalty to. That's the Auditor Call. I've got individuals I have to look after because they looked after me. And I don't forget those who helped me. But at the end of the night, I'm just trying to survive like everyone else. The less morally questionable I can do it, the better, but I fear there'll come a time where I don't have that luxury. And there is a greater threat to the Auditor Call, to my clan, to the kindred as a whole, and this city, and those who dwell within it. And that is my biggest concern. I want to see them driven out. I want to see them so disorganized that it'll take them a long, long while to regroup and try and do what they have been doing. They are clearly our enemies, our common enemies. I'd see the big threat destroyed before we try to go back to the games of backstabbing each other, as disgraceful as it might be. And yes, I'm done.
What did you wish to speak to me on the matter of trade, Mr. Goodman?
Curious what you'd be willing to trade for tutelage under the art of obfuscation.
I will warn, it is not by any means my strongest ability, but I am inclined enough to be able to teach the basics, if nothing else. What about you, Mr. Irons? Is there anything in my repertoire that you desire?
Well, I find it rather annoying that my sight is limited. Maybe if I were able to perceive things beyond the scope of man, that might also help me have a better overview of things I'm dealing with. I don't know if the kind of auspex you have would allow me to see our common enemies.
It is recommended in our order that eventually we all learn it, but I'm in no real rush.
But yes, maybe some auspex would be a good idea.
I actually have a question that you guys might be able to answer because I actually don't know the rules on this. Scale, do you have to have the prerequisite coil, or can you learn the scale sans the coil?
You can learn a make crate or learn a scale without the coil. You just have to make more successes.
No, but if I have a scale, can I teach it to you if you don't have the coil?
Yes, I said
Yes,
on our part, we'd have to have more successes.
but yes, the answer is yes.
He will flick open another dossier and he'll throw it between you two, and he'll say, "In addition, I can offer this."
Bends over and has a look.
This one I will actually have to read verbatim because this is my custom scale. If it helps, I've developed like 4 scales since this game began.
Nice. I was working on one, but then I lost my house.
I pretty much just like pump out scales. It's kind of my shit. This one is called Mystic Intensity. After meditation under a silver circle, the subject can spend vitae to improve her dice pools for disciplines as if they were physical intensity.
That's convenient.
He's curious if either of you are interested in that.
Ooh.
I have a character that doesn't help me. None of my disciplines involve dice rolls. They're all physical based, basically.
Marcus goes and looks. An empowerment circle. Impressive.
But I tell you what, Mr. Goodman, for tutelage in Obfuscate, I will take your abilities of physical resilience.
Fair trade.
Right, so for you, Mr. Irons, I suggest a double trade.
Oh, what have you got in mind?
Yes. He looks at him and he smiles before he'll say, Weird question. Does Marcus have any supernatural merits?
He has one.
What is it?
Pyrokinesis.
Oh, okay. It's a one I already possess. He'll say, "Very well. For you, Mr. Irons, I'll teach you the art of I'll teach you the art of auspex if you will, in exchange, teach me the Ventru command of the human mind."
Teaching you dominate. Teaching somebody who could dominate somebody literally out of the shadows. Out of character, I don't know how strongly the Ventru clan monopolizes that discipline, quite frankly, out of character.
It's actually written in the Order Dracul book that we are actually pretty okay with swapping disciplines in the Order. We do it quite a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Actually, I think whatchamacallit, I think that Daryl quoted that about 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big ones the Ordos trade is Ausfix for sure, because Beckett and Ginger are typically the majority clans. So
I'll even sweeten the agreement. He looks down at Mr. Irons and he says, "You want to see like I can see."
Yes.
It would mean you'd have to wear an eye patch, but I can give you one of my eyes.
And I guess in return you would like one of my eyes.
He contemplates for a few long moments before he'll shrug and he'll say, "Not overly. The art that I would wish for the eye, I will already be learning from you. It would just be a matter of you would owe me a favor for the future.
Hmm. Hmm. Out of character, I'm mulling it over. Um,
Just to clarify, Julian is cool with it's not called force, it's resilience. Resilience for obfuscate. You're cool with that?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
yeah. For obfuscate. Because they're both technically physical disciplines aided by clan. They're not clan disciplines or anything for either side. You wanted Protean, that'd be like, yeah. Well, he will.
oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
He will ask since he's here, and we are making deals, basically trading amongst our hordes. So he will ask and he kind of points to the medical equipment around this place, and say, "How much would it cost to use your facilities for research?"
He kind of blinks and casually looks around. By the way, sorry, Mark, were you going to give me an answer, Marcus, before I start talking about a completely different facet of business and lose my train of thought?
Yeah, I was just about to answer. Hmm. All right. Well, it would make me. Yeah. You know what? Keep your eye. I am more a fan of equivalent exchanges. You teach me the first tier of Auspex, and I'll teach you the first tier of Dominate.
Good. We have a deal. As to using my facilities, Mr. Goodman, I don't suppose that you'd make much of a mess. He kind of glances around, pops his head out the door, kind of thinks for a moment, and he'll say, I assume we're dealing in monetary amounts for this.
Well, unfortunately, my monetary is near zero, so I'd have to owe you.
I think I could forward you some cash.
He'll shrug. Out of character, he'll ask for he'll ask for 2 dots of cash, basically. The resource cash.
Marcus nods. I can acquire the funds for that. Nothing easier.
Right. As long as you understand that if you break anything, etc., etc., etc. But yes, you can use my laboratory space. There is also a very weak worm's nest that this building is built on, which enables me to do most of my psychonetic surgery. So you may also take advantage of that. It's not nearly as good as the worm's nest I'm currently building, but he shrugs.
Julian.
As for Nikolai, have we decided how we want to proceed with the fellow? I'd rather see him staked and torpid than out and out finished.
Well, if it's a matter of deprogramming him, if he is being forced to do something against his will, I may be capable of picking through and seeing what is real and what is not by reading his mind.
But he's one of your people. You'll notice.
I beg your pardon?
Julian said he's one of your people. He will notice.
Yes, that's why I rather thought he'd be staked and tied to a chair when I did it.
Maybe with a little bit of time, I might be able to advance enough in my singular discipline to help with the deprogramming.
Well, it all richly depends on what the nature of the control is, or if he is doing this of his own volition. If he has joined the cult of Valerius, then he is unfortunately a traitor to the Ordo.
Well, and we know how we deal with traitors.
Let's not forget Moreau got returned back to the Ordo. So-
Yes, but Moreau, let us be fair, there's a gigantic difference between praising vampiric Jesus and possibly actively going against the interests of the sect to commit a war crime against our allies.
I say this. Let's not do anything too hasty. Gotta prove without a shadow of a doubt. And whatnot, like the Americans. Decent technique.
Innocent until proven guilty. This is the 21st century, after all.
And I have the most contact with Nikolai. So I will talk to him and see how exactly his position is. It's the best that I can.
For all we know, he just might be really badly blood bonded to Valerius.
If that's the case, good luck snapping that bond.
I guess at the very least, with all the help he's offered me, I would at least owe him a bloody bath, if you catch my drift.
Yes, but that is entirely based upon the individual's, well, shall we say, ability to break the... It depends on the potency of the blood in question.
But of course, I would also have to point out that if that's the case, and we can prove it, we would have to hand him over to the judges, and they then hand him over to the axe for execution.
Oh.
There
Sad
are
but true.
Yeah. But whatever we do, we have to do it by the book. After all, one night we might find ourselves in, maybe not in his exact position, but if life has taught me anything, nothing is quite for sure. So yeah, let's see that he gets a fair shake. That's all I'm saying.
No, I completely agree with you. I do not want him to be... I wish that this was not the case. However, I fear this is. So we must hope for the best and plan for the worst.
Agreed. And I'll see if I can't wrangle my Childer in and see how she's doing. If I have any suspicions, know this, Hartwell, you'll be the first person I'll contact to give her a look over.
Always happy to help.
So am I, basically. As long as people are not trying to piss in my cereal. And yes, it's a very humble cereal. He smiles.
Well, we know definitely not to piss in your Cocoa Pops.
Excellent. And
but I feel this has been this has been a good meeting, gentlemen.
Agreed. You have my contact details. I'll see that we find the right place and maybe even the right targets, and see if we can't get you up and running, at least with some simple commands.
Julian nods, but there's obviously a look of apprehension on his face.
I mean, something tells me it's going to be ugly one way or another. Better fortify ourselves for the nights to come. And fingers crossed, he knocks on the wood that we are able to save more than we have to dispatch.
Quite so. Well, I should bid you good evening, gentlemen.
Evening, Mr. Hartwell. Master Julian nods and uses his hand to shake it.
He will shake the hand. You will notice that there is quite. He's clearly much. It's actually quite ironic. How strong is Julian? Because Julian looks much stronger than Hartwell.
Despite the image, Julian is actually only strength 3.
Yeah, Hartwell is much stronger than you are.
He gets his extra buff when he frenzies, not actually.
Yeah, no, I get you. Because I have the same strength as you, and I have like 3 levels of vigor, so literally about double the strength.
Yeah. Marcus gets up just out of habit, dusts off his hands, and goes, "Well, let's see if we can't get our covenant into a fortuitous position."
Yes, if you notice any strange movements amongst the acts, Master Julian, I know that though you are not currently a member considered to be in good standing or sworn thereof, you may hear things. I would very much like to know, as if the Kogile wishes to have me executed again, I would much rather avoid said noose.
I'll keep my ears sharp. It is high time that I get a little bit more active with the Sworn of the Mysteries. On the unlikely case I overhear something, I'll throw a hint in your direction. Well, to be fair, it'll be more than a hint, but you know what I mean.
Julian nods. Despite my official position, the acts do not reject me.
Good.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing. It could be that in a few nights my sire makes his grand return, one could say. I might be called upon to stand publicly beside him. I just thought I'd like to give you a heads up. Not to
If it helps, I knew his grand return was coming. Alexander says, smiling.
Yes, I'm growing used to the fact that I'm the last kindred to hear about anything of note in this city. It's quite all right.
The Auspex will help that.
Yes. And I'll keep in mind what you said about the blood bond and how to break it.
That is assuming that Nikolai is bloodbound, but only time and research will tell.
That is true. That is true. But yes. And I guess with that, sir, offers a hand to shake it.
He will stand and shake your hand.
And note that Hartwell is way and leagues stronger.
It's one of those things that I always like to kind of, show when you've got potence or any kind of real physical discipline like the...
Nah, Hartwell is just feeling strength too at the moment.
All right. I will talk to you guys later, as I have one or two other things I have to do. This has been a delightful scene. We should do it more often.
With that, thank you players for playing, watchers for watching. Have a good morning, evening, or night.